Chapter 21. Choosing an archetype. The first strategic decision. At the beginning of an artist's visual identity, there is a temptation to ask the wrong question. What should I wear? That question feels practical. It leads to mood boards, references, shopping, stylists, makeup tests, color palettes, and photo shoots. But it often skips the deeper issue: what role is the artist playing in the audience's imagination? Before clothing, before logo, before album cover, before stage design, the artist must decide what kind of figure they are becoming. That figure is the archetype. An archetype is not a costume. It is not a rigid personality box. It is not a marketing trick pasted over a real person. In modern music identity, an archetype is the organizing logic behind how an artist appears, moves, changes, and is remembered. It answers practical questions. What does the audience expect from this artist? Should the artist feel mysterious, intimate, rebellious, luxurious, mythic, ordinary, dangerous, humorous, spiritual, futuristic, or culturally rooted? How much transformation can the audience tolerate? How much consistency does the artist need? What visual signals must survive the thumbnail, the stage, the fan edit, and the viral loop? Choosing an archetype is the first major strategic decision in building a modern music identity because it determines what all later choices mean. The same oversized coat can signal anti-stardom, luxury minimalism, street authority, gender disruption, or mythic concealment depending on the archetype behind it. The same red lighting can feel romantic, violent, demonic, glamorous, theatrical, or political depending on the artist's identity system. Without an archetype, visuals remain isolated choices. With an archetype, visuals become language. Archetype is structure, not prison. Many artists fear that choosing an archetype will make them fake or predictable. This fear is understandable. Musicians often define themselves through emotional truth, contradiction, experimentation, and change. The idea of selecting a role can seem artificial. But the problem is not archetype. The problem is shallow archetype. A shallow archetype says, I will copy the surface of a successful artist. A strong archetype says, I understand the visual role I am building, and I will execute it through my own voice, body, history, genre, and emotional reality. The chameleon is not simply someone who changes clothes a lot. The minimal icon is not simply someone who dresses simply. The anti-star is not simply someone who rejects glamour. The myth creator is not simply someone with big sets. The cultural symbol is not simply someone who uses heritage references. Each archetype is a structure for decision-making. It tells the artist what to emphasize, what to repeat, what to protect, what to exaggerate, and what to avoid. A good archetype does not reduce complexity. It organizes complexity. The artist can still evolve. In fact, evolution becomes easier because the audience understands the logic behind the change. Beyoncé can move through different visual eras because her identity contains authority, excellence, spectacle, discipline, and transformation. Bad Bunny can shift from streetwear to gender-fluid glamour to wrestling-influenced performance because the deeper archetype remains culturally specific, rebellious, and emotionally direct. Billie Eilish can move from oversized concealment to classic Hollywood references because her identity still negotiates discomfort, vulnerability, control, and refusal. Archetype is not the cage. It is the skeleton. Why artists need archetypes now? In earlier media environments, an artist's identity could unfold slowly. A magazine profile could explain contradictions. A music video could create a full narrative. A live show could immerse the audience for 90 minutes. The contemporary environment is less patient. An artist may be discovered through a 3-second clip, a playlist cover, a cropped performance video, a meme, a fan edit, a behind-the-scenes post, or a single outfit on a red carpet. In that moment, the audience is not reading an essay. They are making a fast classification. What genre is this? What attitude is this? Is this artist polished or raw? Are they funny or serious? Are they expensive or accessible? Are they rebellious or controlled? Are they intimate or larger than life? These judgments happen before the music is fully understood. This does not mean audiences are superficial. It means platforms compress attention. Modern identity must survive the thumbnail, the vertical feed, the stage clip, and the loopable gesture. An archetype helps because it reduces visual recall latency. It gives the audience a faster path to recognition. When an artist's archetype is clear, each image strengthens the previous image. A hairstyle, posture, palette, location, silhouette, and facial expression begin to accumulate meaning. The audience does not need to restart interpretation every time. They learn the artist's code. When an artist has no archetype, every new image competes with the last. One post says luxury. The next says punk. The next says soft romantic. The next says meme comic. The next says spiritual futurist. None of these are wrong individually, but without an organizing logic, they blur together. The result is not freedom. The result is weak memory. The core archetype families. The archetypes explored earlier in this book can be used as practical starting points for identity design. They are not the only possible categories, but they represent dominant patterns among globally influential post-2015 artists. Each one solves a different identity problem. The chameleon. The chameleon builds power through transformation. This artist's audience expects change, new eras, new hair, new silhouettes, new moods, new references. This archetype suits artists whose music moves across genres, whose personality contains theatricality, or whose career strategy depends on reinvention. The risk is inconsistency. The chameleon must maintain a recognizable core beneath surface change, a recurring attitude, facial language, performance intensity, body grammar, or conceptual obsession. The key question is, what remains constant when everything changes? The minimal icon. The minimal icon builds power through reduction. This artist removes visual noise until only a few signals remain: a silhouette, a color field, a haircut, a lighting style, a garment category, a mood. This archetype suits artists whose music is atmospheric, emotionally controlled, introspective, luxurious, or cool. It also works for performers who do not want their image to overwhelm the sound. The risk is emptiness. Minimalism without emotional charge becomes forgettable. The key question is, what can be removed without losing identity? The character builder. The character builder constructs identity through roles, members, eras, and repeatable character codes. This archetype is especially visible in K-pop systems, where styling, choreography, color, facial expression, and group positioning are designed as a coordinated identity machine. It suits artists or groups who can sustain precision, repetition, and highly managed visual storytelling. The risk is over-control. If the system becomes too perfect, it can lose emotional oxygen. The key question is, how does each visual role strengthen the larger identity system? The anti-star. The anti-star builds visibility through refusal. This artist may reject conventional glamour, conceal the body, use awkwardness, resist polish, or make discomfort central to the image. This archetype suits artists whose music depends on vulnerability, alienation, irony, intimacy, or generational disillusionment. The risk is becoming trapped in rejection. Once anti-glamour becomes expected, it can become its own costume. The key question is, what am I refusing, and what does that refusal reveal? The myth creator. The myth creator turns the artist into a world. The identity may include fictional landscapes, symbolic characters, ritualized performances, extreme stage environments, recurring objects, or narrative universes. This archetype suits artists with cinematic ambition, spectacle-driven live shows, strong symbolic instincts, or music that feels larger than personal confession. The risk is excess. A world without emotional center becomes decoration. The key question is, what world does the audience enter when they encounter me? The cultural symbol. The cultural symbol turns origin into visual language. This artist uses place, language, heritage, diaspora, regional style, political memory, or cultural rhythm as a core identity engine. This archetype suits artists whose power comes from specificity rather than neutrality. The risk is flattening culture into costume. The strongest cultural symbols do not use culture as surface. They make it structural. The key question is, how can my world become unmistakable? Primary, secondary, and shadow archetypes. Most artists are not one archetype in pure form. A more useful method is to define 3 layers: primary, secondary, and shadow. The primary archetype is the main role the audience should remember. It guides the central identity system. The secondary archetype adds depth. It allows contrast, flexibility, and evolution. The shadow archetype is the danger zone, the version of the identity that appears when the system becomes lazy, exaggerated, or imitative. For example, an artist may be primarily an anti-star, secondarily a minimal icon, with a shadow risk of becoming visually dull. Another may be primarily a myth creator, secondarily a cultural symbol, with a shadow risk of becoming overdesigned or exploitative. A chameleon may use transformation as the primary engine, but the shadow risk is confusion. If every era changes too completely, the audience loses the artist inside the styling. This 3-layer model helps creative teams avoid both rigidity and chaos. It allows complexity without abandoning recognition. Translating archetype into a visual system. An archetype is only useful if it becomes visible. It must eventually translate into 6 practical categories: silhouette, color, texture, movement, environment, behavior. Silhouette determines the outline the audience remembers. Is the body concealed, elongated, armored, exposed, oversized, uniformed, sculptural, relaxed, or exaggerated? Color determines emotional temperature. Is the palette dark, neon, earthy, metallic, pastel, monochrome, saturated, ceremonial, or unstable? Texture determines physical feeling. Does the artist world feel glossy, distressed, soft, industrial, handmade, digital, luxurious, sweaty, synthetic, or raw? Movement determines how the identity behaves in motion. Is the artist still, explosive, fluid, awkward, precise, sensual, aggressive, ritualistic, or casual? Environment determines where the artist seems to belong: bedroom, club, desert, city street, luxury interior, digital void, ancestral landscape, school hallway, warehouse, arena, church, car, backstage corridor, fantasy world. Behavior determines the persona's social language. Does the artist stare, smile, avoid eye contact, joke, dominate, invite, tease, confront, confess, seduce, disappear, or command? The archetype shapes the meaning of each category. A minimal icon and a myth creator can both use black, but black will not mean the same thing. For the minimal icon, it may signal restraint and emotional distance. For the myth creator, it may signal ritual, void, danger, or cosmic scale. Visual identity is not built from ingredients alone. It is built from meaning. When to change archetypes. Artists evolve. The archetype chosen at the beginning of a career may not remain dominant forever. Growth, fame, age, audience expansion, genre shifts, personal transformation, and cultural context can all require change. But changing archetype is different from changing styling. A styling change may be seasonal. An archetype change alters the audience's understanding of the artist's role. There are moments when archetype evolution makes sense. The music has fundamentally changed, the artist's life stage has changed, the old identity has become too restrictive, the audience has matured, or the previous archetype was chosen incorrectly. The strongest transitions preserve continuity. The artist does not simply abandon the old system. They transform its core tension. An anti-star may become a minimal icon by refining refusal into control. A chameleon may become a myth creator by organizing transformation into a larger world. A cultural symbol may become a global myth creator by expanding local symbols into epic narrative. The audience can accept change when they understand why it happened. They resist change when it feels like amnesia. The practical decision. Choosing an archetype is not mystical. It is a strategic creative decision made from evidence. Listen to the music. Watch the body. Study the biography. Understand the temperament. Clarify the ambition. Test the identity in the feed, on stage, in press language, and through fan replication. Identify the primary archetype, secondary archetype, and shadow risk. Write the archetype statement. Translate it into silhouette, color, texture, movement, environment, and behavior. Then repeat the system until the audience learns it. This repetition is not creative laziness. It is how recognition forms. Audiences need patterns before they can appreciate disruption. The artist must teach the public how to see them. In modern music, identity does not emerge only from talent. It emerges from talent made legible. The archetype is the first tool of legibility. It compresses personality without eliminating depth. It gives creative teams a shared language. It gives fans something to recognize, imitate, and believe in. The goal is not to become a type. The goal is to become unmistakable.